My parents took $50,000 to stay quiet after a hospital stole my DNA at 14, now I'm 17, and the nurse who used it just asked me to raise the son I never knew I had. When I asked my mom why she hid it, she whispered, because we thought you'd never find out. I didn't answer. That was 9 months ago. Yesterday, she sat in the front row at his kindergarten graduation, holding a sign that said, "Go Lucas." I was scrolling through TikTok on the couch when my mom walked in holding a stack of envelopes. Christmas was 3 weeks ago, and she'd made the whole family do those 23andMe tests as her idea of family bonding. Your results came in, Mom said, tossing me the envelope. She seemed weirdly tense, but I figured she was just stressed about work. I ripped it open while she stood there watching me. The ancestry stuff was boring. Then I scrolled down to the DNA relatives section. My heart stopped. Right there at the top it said, child, male, age 3, living within 50 miles. I laughed because what else was I supposed to do? Mom, their system is broken. Says I have a kid. I showed her my phone screen. The color drained from her face completely. She grabbed the phone from my hands and stared at it. Then she called for my dad in that voice she only uses when something is seriously wrong. Dad came downstairs and they both studied my phone like it was some ancient artifact. They kept exchanging these looks. Finally, Dad said we needed to talk. That's when I started feeling sick to my stomach. They sat me down at the kitchen table like they did when they told me Grandpa died. There's something we need to tell you, Mom started. Her hands were shaking. When you were 14, you had your tonsils removed at Riverside Medical. I remembered that. Worst week of my life. Nothing but ice cream and pain meds. Yeah, so what does that have to do with anything? Dad cleared his throat. A few months after your surgery, we got a letter from the hospital. There had been some irregularities with their procedures. They offered us a settlement if we signed some papers. My brain wasn't computing what they were saying. Mom jumped in. We didn't think you'd ever need to know. The hospital was harvesting genetic material from patients during routine procedures, selling it to fertility clinics. I stood up so fast, the chair fell over. You're telling me someone stole my sperm when I was 14, and you knew about it? We didn't know they'd actually use it, Dad said. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. The lawyer said the samples were destroyed in the investigation. My phone buzzed. An email from 23andMe. Someone had messaged me through their system. Pili Dogan, the woman who'd used my stolen DNA to have a baby. I clicked on her profile, and there was a picture. A little boy with my exact eyes staring back at me. Mom was crying now. We took the money for your college fund, $50,000. We thought we were protecting you. I felt like I was drowning. Some stranger out there was raising my biological son. A kid I never chose to create. A kid who existed because a hospital violated me when I was barely a teenager. The room started spinning. The next few days were a blur of lawyers and paperwork. Turns out Pili Dogan was a nurse at Riverside who got fired during the investigation. She'd stolen several samples before they caught her. Used mine for her own IVF procedure. The lawyer said she was filing for child support now because she'd lost her job and was desperate. We met at the lawyer's office a week later. She brought Lucas. That was his name. Lucas. He had my nose and my stupid cowlick that never stays down. He was playing with a tablet in the corner while the adults talked about money and custody and rights. Pili looked exhausted, broken. She kept apologizing and crying. Said she'd been 35 and single and couldn't afford regular IVF. Said she picked me from the medical files because I had good grades and no health issues, like I was a product in a catalog. I know what I did was wrong, she said, but I love him. He's my whole world. I just can't afford to take care of him alone anymore. The lawyer was talking about our options, how we could fight it, how she'd committed fraud, how we could probably get her arrested, but I couldn't stop staring at Lucas. He looked up at me and smiled. He had no idea his whole existence was based on a crime. That's when Pili dropped the real bomb. I have stage 3 lymphoma. Started treatment last month. I need to know someone will take care of him if I don't make it. My parents went silent. The lawyer stopped writing. Lucas kept playing his game, oblivious to how his world was about to change. And I sat there, 17 years old, trying to figure out how to be a father to a kid I never knew existed. A kid who only existed because adults I trusted violated me and covered it up. The meeting ended without any decisions. We're still figuring it out. But I added Pili on Facebook yesterday. She posts videos of Lucas constantly. He likes dinosaurs and hates vegetables, just like I did at that age. I scrolled through more of her posts that night. Lucas at the park, Lucas eating ice cream, Lucas building blocks. Each video felt like watching a life I should have been part of but wasn't. My hands shook as I watched him blow out 3 candles on a dinosaur cake. Mom knocked on my door around midnight. She came in without waiting for an answer and sat on the edge of my bed. The mattress creaked under her weight. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. We thought we were protecting you, she whispered. I kept scrolling through Pili's Facebook. Lucas in a Halloween costume. Lucas at the zoo. Lucas sleeping in what looked like a hospital bed with an IV in his arm. The timestamp said 2 weeks ago. You took $50,000 to keep quiet about someone stealing part of me, I said. She flinched. The lawyer said the samples were destroyed. We never imagined. You never imagined what? That someone would use them? That I'd find out? That there'd be a kid out there with my DNA who thinks some criminal is his only family? Mom stood up and walked to my window. She pressed her forehead against the glass. We were scared. You were so young. The hospital threatened to drag it out in court for years. They said you'd have to testify about what they did during the surgery. We couldn't put you through that. I closed Facebook and threw my phone on the nightstand. So instead, you let me find out from a DNA test that I have a son. Real protective, Mom. She turned around. Tears streaked her face. What do you want us to do? We can't change what happened. I want you to stop lying to me. I want you to stop making decisions about my life without telling me. I stopped because I didn't know what I wanted. Some kid I'd never met was dying to meet his dad, except his dad was a 17-year-old who just found out he existed. Mom left without saying anything else. I heard her crying in her room through the thin walls. Dad's voice rumbled low, trying to comfort her. I pulled my pillow pillow over my head but couldn't block out the sound. The next morning, I called the lawyer myself. Mr. Patterson sounded surprised to hear from me. I want to meet Lucas again. Without all the lawyers and offices and paperwork, he cleared his throat. That's not advisable at this time. Mr. Dogan is pursuing child support and any interaction could be seen as... I hung up on him. Pilly had included her number in her Facebook message. I stared at it for 20 minutes before dialing. She answered on the first ring. Hello? It's me. It's me. Silence stretched between us. I heard Lucas laughing in the background. I'm sorry, she finally said. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but can I see him? Just normally? Like at a park or something? She made a sound that might have been a sob. He's been asking about his dad. I told him his dad was sick. I didn't know what else to say. We agreed to meet at Riverside Park that Saturday. Neutral ground, no lawyers, no parents, just us and Lucas. I told my parents that night at dinner. Dad dropped his fork. Mom pushed her plate away. Absolutely not, Dad said. She's suing us for child support. Any contact needs to go through lawyers. She's suing because she's dying and has no money. Her kid, my kid, needs someone. And you two decided 3 years ago that I didn't need to know about any of this, so I don't really care what you think I should do now. Mom reached across the table. Honey, we understand you're upset. I stood up. Upset? I have a son. A 3-year-old son who exists because a hospital stole from me, and you took money to keep quiet about it. Upset doesn't even begin to cover it. I spent the next 3 days researching everything I could about lymphoma. Stage 3. Treatable, but serious. 5-year survival rate around 70%. I learned about chemotherapy schedules and side effects. I learned about medical bills and how they destroy families. I learned about single mothers who make desperate choices. Saturday came too fast. I sat in my car outside the park for 10 minutes before getting out. My legs felt like jelly. Through the playground fence, I could see Pilly pushing Lucas on a swing. He was laughing, his head thrown back, that same cowlick sticking up just like mine. Pilly saw me first. She whispered something to Lucas and pointed. He looked over, suddenly shy. She walked him to where I stood by the fence. Lucas, this is your dad. He hid behind her leg, peeking out at me. Hi, he whispered. Hey buddy, your mom says you like dinosaurs. His eyes lit up. I have a T-Rex and a Brachiosaurus and a Triceratops. Wow, that's awesome. I used to have dinosaur toys too. He stepped out from behind Pilly. Really? Really. I still have some in my closet actually. We walked to a bench while Lucas ran back to the playground. Pilly looked worse than she had at the lawyer's office. Thinner, paler, dark circles under her eyes. The treatment is expensive, she said without preamble. I lost my job when the investigation started. Been working retail, but the chemo schedule makes it hard. I didn't want to contact you. I swear I didn't, but I can't. I need help. I watched Lucas climb the jungle gym. $50,000 to stay quiet about stealing DNA from a 14-year-old? I'm trying to understand how his parents justified keeping this massive secret for 3 years. He moved carefully, testing each bar before committing, just like I used to. What you did was wrong, I said. I know, like really, really wrong. You stole from me, from a kid. I know. Her voice cracked. I think about it every day, every time I look at him, but I can't regret him. I won't regret him. He's the best thing in my life. Lucas waved from the top of the slide. We both waved back. What happens if the treatment doesn't work? I asked. Pilly pulled her jacket tighter. I don't have family. His father, well, you know that situation. I've been trying to figure out options, but who's going to take in the kid of someone who stole genetic material? She nodded. We sat in silence while Lucas played. Other parents pushed their kids on swings, helped them down slides, caught them at the bottom. Normal families doing normal things. Nothing about our situation was normal. I want to be in his life, I heard myself say. Not because of lawyers or child support or whatever, but because he's mine. Even if I didn't choose it. Even if it happened the worst way possible. He's mine. Pilly started crying. Quiet tears that she quickly wiped away. I didn't expect that. I thought you'd hate us. Hate him. I hate what you did. I hate that my parents lied. I hate that I'm 17 and have to figure out how to be a dad. But I don't hate him. He didn't ask for any of this either. Lucas ran over, out of breath. Mom! Dad! Watch this! He ran back to the playground and did a wobbly cartwheel. Dad. He called me dad like it was the most natural thing in the world. We should probably talk about the legal stuff, Pilly said. I know you don't want lawyers involved, but my parents have money. The money they got from the hospital actually. Seems fitting it should go to Lucas. She shook her head. I don't want their money. I need to know he'll be okay. If something happens, I need legal documentation that says you'll take him. My phone buzzed. Mom texting, asking where I was. I ignored it. We'll figure it out, I said. All of it. The money, the custody stuff, everything. But right now, can we just let him play? She nodded. We stayed at the park until the sun started setting. Lucas showed me his dinosaur impressions. I pushed him on the swings. Pilly took pictures, probably for her Facebook. For 3 hours, we pretended to be a normal family at the park. As we were leaving, Lucas grabbed my hand. His fingers were so small in mine. Will you come back? He asked. I looked at Pilly. She nodded slightly. Yeah, buddy, I'll come back. He smiled, and my heart broke a little more. This kid loved so easily, trusted so completely. He had no idea his whole world was built on lies and crimes and desperate choices. I drove home in silence. My parents were waiting in the living room, looking like they'd been arguing. We need to talk about boundaries, Dad started. I walked past them to my room. There would be time for arguments and boundaries and lawyers. Right now, I just needed to process that I'd spent the afternoon with my son who called me dad, my son who existed because of a crime everyone wanted to pretend hadn't happened. I pulled out my old box of dinosaur toys from the closet, dusty plastic figures I hadn't touched in years. Tomorrow I'd clean them off, maybe bring them to the park next time. Lucas would like that. My phone buzzed, a Facebook notification. Pilly had tagged me in a photo. Lucas on the swings, me pushing him, both of us laughing. The caption just said, thank you. I accepted the tag, let people see, let them ask questions. I was tired of secrets. Mom knocked again. Honey, can we please talk? Tomorrow, I called back. We'll talk tomorrow. Tonight, I just wanted to look at pictures of my son and try to figure out how to be 17 and a father at the same time. How to love a kid who came from a crime. How to forgive parents parents who lied, how to help a dying woman who stole from me but loved the result more than anything. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and arguments and decisions. Tonight, I just scrolled through 3 years of photos I'd missed, memorizing the face of a little boy who had my eyes and my cowlick and my old love of dinosaurs. The morning brought exactly what I'd expected. Mom and Dad sat at the kitchen table with coffee and serious expressions. I grabbed a bowl of cereal and joined them, ready for round 2. Dad started with his prepared speech about legal ramifications and protecting our family's interests. Mom chimed in with concerns about emotional manipulation and getting too attached. I let them talk while I ate my cereal, nodding occasionally to show I was listening. When they finished, I pushed my empty bowl aside. I explained that Lucas was my son, regardless of how he came to exist. I told them about watching him play, seeing myself in his movements, feeling a connection I couldn't ignore. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's eyes filled with tears again. The conversation went in circles until I stood up and announced I was meeting Pilly and Lucas again that afternoon, this time at her apartment. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Mom gasped. I walked out before they could launch into another lecture. Pilly's apartment complex sat on the edge of town, one of those places with peeling paint and broken playground equipment. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, my stomach churning with each step. The hallway smelled like old carpet and cooking grease. She opened the door before I could knock. Lucas peeked out from behind her legs, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. The apartment was small but clean, toys scattered across the living room floor, medical bills stacked on the coffee table, a calendar on the wall marked with chemotherapy appointments. Lucas warmed up quickly this time. He showed me his dinosaur collection, explaining each one's special powers. I sat on the floor with him, making dinosaur noises and staging epic battles. Pilly watched from the couch, looking even more exhausted than before. After an hour of playing, Lucas fell asleep on the carpet, still clutching his T-Rex. Pilly covered him with a blanket and motioned for me to follow her to the kitchen. She poured 2 glasses of water and leaned against the counter. She pulled out a folder from a drawer and slid it across to me. Inside were medical records, treatment plans, bills marked past due in red. The numbers made my head spin. Tens of thousands of dollars, insurance covering barely half. I studied the papers while she explained her situation. Lost her nursing license after the investigation. Working minimum wage at a grocery store. Missing shifts for chemo. Behind on rent. Running out of options. She showed me another document. A will she'd drafted. My name listed as Lucas's guardian if something happened to her. My hands shook as I read it. This was real. Too real. I asked about her treatment, her prognosis. She shrugged and said the doctors were optimistic, but nothing was guaranteed. She needed to focus on getting better, but the stress of finances made everything worse. The way she looked at me made it clear what she was asking without actually asking. I left that afternoon with my head spinning. Lucas had woken up and hugged me goodbye. His little arms around my neck felt like chains and lifelines at the same time. Back home, I found Mom in my room, going through my laptop. She jumped when I walked in, guilty but defiant. She'd found my research on lymphoma, on custody laws, on Pilly's background. We argued. She accused Pilly of manipulating me. I accused her of invading my privacy. Neither of us backed down. Dad joined the argument, bringing printouts from a private investigator he'd hired, Pilly's credit history, her work record, even her dating profile from years ago. I felt sick looking at it. This violation of someone already desperate. They painted a picture of an unstable woman who'd make terrible choices, who'd stolen genetic material, who was now using her illness to trap me. I threw the papers in the trash and stormed out. I drove around for hours, ending up at the park where I'd first met Lucas. Empty swings moved in the wind. I sat on the bench and tried to sort through the mess in my head. My parents weren't wrong about Pilly's past, but they hadn't seen Lucas, hadn't felt that connection. My phone rang. Pilly's number. Her voice sounded strange, slurred. She was at the hospital. Bad reaction to the chemo. No one to watch Lucas. Could I come? I broke several traffic laws getting there. Found Lucas in the waiting room with a worried nurse. He ran to me, crying. I picked him up and he buried his face in my shoulder. The nurse explained that Pilly was stable, but would be admitted overnight. Did I have legal authority to take the child? I lied. Said I was his father, which was technically true. Showed my ID. The nurse looked skeptical but had bigger problems to deal with. I carried Lucas out to my car, realizing I had no car seat, no idea what I was doing. We stopped at a store. I bought a car seat, struggling to install it while Lucas watched. Bought some pull-ups because I didn't know if he was potty trained. Goldfish crackers because kids like those, right? My hands shook the entire time. I couldn't take him home. My parents would lose it. Instead, I drove to my friend Jake's house. His older sister had kids. Maybe she'd know what to do. Jake answered the door, took one look at me holding a toddler, and his eyes went wide. His sister, thankfully, was home. She helped without asking too many questions, showed me how to properly buckle the car seat, gave me tips on bedtime routines, lent me some toys and books her kids had outgrown. I texted my parents that I was staying at Jake's. Mom called 17 times. I didn't answer. Lucas needed dinner, a bath, someone to read him stories, someone to be there when he woke up crying for his mom. That night was the longest of my life. Lucas doing cartwheels and calling him dad, like he's been practicing in the mirror for weeks. Meanwhile, our teen hero's processing fatherhood faster than his AP biology homework ever prepared him. Lucas woke up every hour, confused and scared. I held him, rocked him, made up stories about brave dinosaurs. By morning, we were both exhausted, but he was calling me daddy like he'd been doing it forever. Pilly called from the hospital. Her voice sounded stronger. She thanked me repeatedly, crying, said she'd never had anyone she could count on before. The words felt heavy, loaded with expectation. I brought Lucas to visit her that afternoon. He clung to her hospital bed, careful of her IV lines. She looked small and fragile against the white sheets. The nurse mentioned something about social services doing a home visit. Pilly's eyes went wide with panic. After the visit, I took Lucas back to her apartment to get some of his things. Found an eviction notice taped to the door. 3 months behind on rent. settlement, 10 days to pay or get out. The weight of her situation crashed over me. My phone had 53 missed calls from my parents. I finally answered. Mom was crying, Dad was yelling. They demanded I come home immediately, bring the child to proper authorities, stop this insanity. I hung up and turned off my phone. Lucas and I spent the day at the park, then the library, then a McDonald's with a playground, anywhere but home. He was easy to entertain, happy to have someone paying attention to him, but I could see the worry in his eyes when he asked about Mommy. That evening, I knew I had to face my parents. Brought Lucas with me because I had nowhere else to take him. Mom opened the door, saw him, and her face went through about 12 emotions at once. They let us in. Lucas charmed them despite their best efforts to stay distant. He showed Dad his dinosaur, helped Mom set the table with careful concentration. By dinner, they were sneaking glances at him, seeing what I saw. The familiar features, the expressions that matched old family photos. After Lucas fell asleep on the couch, we talked, really talked. Not about lawyers or rights or wrongs, but about a little boy who needed stability. About a sick woman who'd made terrible choices but loved her son. About what family meant when it came in unexpected packages. Dad finally said what we were all thinking. The money from the hospital settlement. It was meant for my college, but maybe it had a different purpose now. The next few days blurred together. Hospital visits, playground afternoons, nights where Lucas stayed with us because Pilly was too sick from treatment. My parents slowly shifting from resistant to protective. Pilly was released, but weak. I drove her home, Lucas chattering in the back seat about staying at my house. She looked at the eviction notice and her shoulders sagged. I made a decision without consulting anyone. I told her about the settlement money. Her face went through shock, suspicion, hope, and back to suspicion. She accused me of trying to buy Lucas. I explained it wasn't about buying anything. It was about making sure Lucas had a home, food, stability, that she could focus on getting better without worrying about money. She broke down completely, sobbing about not deserving help after what she'd done. I sat there, 17 years old, comforting the woman who'd stolen my genetic material. Life was surreal. My parents were surprisingly supportive when I told them. Mom had been researching assistance programs. Dad had talked to a lawyer about setting up a trust for Lucas. They were still angry about the past, but focused on the future. We worked out an arrangement. The settlement money would pay off Pilly's medical debt and keep her apartment. A monthly amount for Lucas's needs. In exchange, she'd add my parents as emergency guardians along with me. Everything legal and documented. Pilly fought it at first, pride and guilt warring on her face, but Lucas needed stability more than she needed her pride. She signed the papers with shaking hands. The first month was an adjustment. I spent every free moment with Lucas, learned his routines, his fears, his favorite foods. My parents went from reluctant to involved, Mom teaching him letters, Dad building block towers. Pilly's treatment intensified. More bad days than good. I'd find her crying in the bathroom while Lucas played, terrified of leaving him. We didn't talk about it directly, but we both knew what she was preparing for. She started teaching me everything. How Lucas liked his sandwiches cut, which songs helped him sleep, his allergies, his fears, his doctor's information. Information dumped with desperate urgency. One night, she called me crying. Lucas was asleep, but she couldn't stop thinking about what she'd done, how she'd created this whole situation, how sorry she was for stealing from me, for ruining my life. I told her she hadn't ruined anything, that Lucas was amazing, that maybe things happened in messed up ways, but the result was this incredible kid who deserved all the love we could give him. She cried harder. My friends found out eventually. Small town gossip traveled fast. Some thought it was cool having a kid. Others whispered about the weird circumstances. I stopped caring what they thought. Lucas was more important than high school drama. The custody arrangement became more formal as Pilly's health fluctuated. Legal documents giving me decision-making power for medical and educational choices. Power of attorney if she was hospitalized. Each signature felt like another step toward an inevitable future. Lucas started calling my parents grandma and grandpa. Mom cried the first time. Dad bought him a toy workbench and spent hours teaching him to use plastic tools. They were grandparents in every way that mattered. Pilly had a bad reaction to a new treatment. Spent a week in the hospital. Lucas stayed with us full time. He adapted quickly, resilient in the way only children can be. But he'd wake up asking for mommy, and I'd have to explain she was getting medicine to feel better. During that week, I realized how much my life had changed. Friends were planning for prom while I was learning about preschool enrollment. They complained about homework while I worried about custody documents. The gap between my old life and new reality felt massive. Pilly recovered but was weaker. She started a notebook for Lucas, writing letters for birthdays she might miss, recording family history he'd want to know, memories of his early years. I'd find her writing late at night, racing against time. She asked me to help her make videos, messages for Lucas's future milestones, first day of school, graduation, wedding day. We spent afternoons recording while Lucas napped, her trying not to cry, me holding the camera with steady hands while my heart broke. The financial arrangement helped, but money couldn't fix everything. Pilly's apartment was on the 3rd floor. Stairs became impossible some days. My parents suggested she move closer to us. Dad found a small house for rent near our neighborhood. 1st floor, yard for Lucas. Moving day was bittersweet. Pilly directing from the couch, too tired to help. Lucas excited about his new room. My parents and I doing most of the work. The house felt like an admission of what we all knew was coming. Lucas started spending half his time with us, an unspoken arrangement that became routine. Dinner at our house, bedtime at his, weekends alternating based on Pilly's treatment schedule. 2 homes blending into one extended family. Pilly and Mom developed an unexpected friendship, bonding over Lucas stories, sharing parenting duties, Mom teaching Pilly to knit so she could make Lucas scarves and hats, small acts of kindness replacing old resentments. I caught them talking one afternoon, Pilly thanking Mom for raising a good son, Mom saying she was sorry for judging her so harshly, both of them crying crying, Lucas playing between them, oblivious to the weight of their words. The notebook grew thicker. Videos, files multiplied. Pilly preparing for a future she might not see. I helped organize everything, scanning photos, backing up files, creating a digital legacy for Lucas to have someday. She made me promise to tell Lucas the truth when he was older. Not the sanitized version, but the real story. How she'd wanted him so badly she'd done something unforgivable. How I'd chosen to love him anyway. How families could form in the strangest ways. Spring arrived with better news. Pilly's latest scans showed improvement. Tumors shrinking. Doctors cautiously optimistic. We celebrated with ice cream in the park, Lucas running between us, chocolate on his face. But the improvement came with its own challenges. Pilly getting better meant examining our strange family dynamic. What happened when she didn't need us as much? When the crisis passed? Where did boundaries exist in this unconventional arrangement? We had awkward conversations about the future. Dating seemed impossible for either of us. How did you explain this situation to someone new? Co-parenting a child born from a crime, bound together by circumstances neither of us chose. Pilly started talking about going back to school, getting certified in something new since nursing was off the table, building a life that wasn't defined by her mistakes. I encouraged her, even as I wondered what that meant for Lucas. For us. Lucas turned 4. We threw a party in the backyard, both sets of his grandparents there, though Pilly's parents still struggled with the situation. Kids from his preschool, normal and strange at the same time. I watched him blow out candles and thought about the journey, from finding out he existed to planning his birthday parties, from anger and confusion to something resembling love. Not the path I'd planned, but the one I was on. Pilly pulled me aside during the party, thanked me again for everything, said she knew the arrangement was strange, but she couldn't imagine doing this without us, without me. The weight of interdependence hung between us. That night, after cake and presents, Lucas fell asleep in my lap. Something's not quite right about how quickly Pilly went from desperately sick to talking about going back to school and building a new life. She had tumors serious enough to need all those goodbye videos, but now she's planning a future? Pilly and I sat on her porch, watching fireflies, not talking about the past or future, just existing in a moment where things were stable, if not normal. My senior year started with unique challenges. Parent-teacher conferences where I was the parent, soccer practice instead of parties, college applications competed with custody paperwork for my attention. Teachers who'd known me since freshman year struggled with my new reality. The guidance counselor didn't know how to advise someone planning college around shared custody. My situation didn't fit their neat categories. Pilly's health stabilized enough for her to start online classes, accounting, practical, and employable. She studied while Lucas played, determined to build something better. I helped when I could, math coming easier to me than to her. We developed rhythms, Tuesday dinners together, weekend park visits, doctor appointments shared between us. Not quite a couple, but more than co-parents. A partnership born from necessity, evolving into something harder to define. My parents embraced their grandparent role fully. Mom retired early to help more with Lucas. Dad started a college fund, joking about second chances at saving for education. They'd forgiven the past in favor of the present. Lucas started asking harder questions. Why he had 2 houses. Why other kids only had 1 daddy. We gave age-appropriate answers, saving the full truth for later. Preserving his innocence while laying groundwork for eventual honesty. Pilly finished her first semester with straight A's, proud and exhausted. We celebrated with pizza and a movie. Lucas asleep between us on the couch. These moments of normalcy felt precious, hard-won through months of uncertainty. Summer break arrived with new complications. Pilly's health improvements coincided with increasingly strange behavior. She started showing up at our house unannounced, always when Lucas wasn't there. She'd cry about missing him, then ask detailed questions about our daily routines. Mom noticed first, mentioning how Pilly seemed to memorize our schedules. I found Pilly in Lucas's room at our house one afternoon, going through his drawers. She jumped when I walked in, clutching one of his shirts. She explained she just wanted something that smelled like him for the nights he stayed with us. The explanation felt off, but I let it slide. Dad discovered the first real problem. Our bank statements showed small withdrawals we hadn't made. The amounts matched the trust fund access we'd given Pilly for Lucas's needs. When confronted, she broke down, admitting she'd been using the money for online gambling, trying to win enough to become financially independent. She promised to stop. Lucas started having nightmares whenever he stayed at Pilly's house. He'd wake up crying about monsters but couldn't explain more. Pilly said it was just a phase, but something felt wrong. I installed a baby monitor app on an old phone, leaving it in his room at her house. The recordings revealed Pilly telling Lucas scary stories before bed. Stories about daddies who steal children, about boys who forget their real mommies. She'd hold him while he cried, whispering that only she could protect him. My hands shook, listening to her psychological manipulation of a 4-year-old. I showed my parents the recordings. Mom went pale. Dad's jaw clenched. We agreed to document everything but avoid confrontation until we had a plan. Lucas needed protection, but we had to be smart about it. Pilly's requests grew more demanding. She wanted Lucas full-time, claiming her improved health meant she could handle it. When we suggested maintaining the current schedule, she mentioned consulting a lawyer about her parental rights. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but clear. She started coaching Lucas to say he wanted to live with only her. I'd pick him up and he'd repeat rehearsed lines about missing mommy, wanting to stay at her house, but once away from her, he'd relax and be himself again. The confusion in his eyes broke my heart. Mom discovered Pilly had been telling people at Lucas's preschool that we were trying to steal him. She'd painted herself as a victim, a sick single mother being bullied by a wealthy family. Some parents started giving us suspicious looks at pickup time. The gambling debts surfaced when a man showed up at Pilly's house while I was dropping Lucas off. He demanded payment, getting aggressive until I intervened. Pilly later admitted she owed several $1,000s to various online sites. She begged for more money from the trust. Dad hired a forensic accountant to review the trust fund usage. The results were staggering. Pili had been siphoning money through various schemes: fake medical expenses, inflated grocery receipts, cash withdrawals for emergencies that never existed, nearly $20,000 unaccounted for. We confronted her with the evidence. She cycled through denial, anger, and finally manipulation. She threatened to take Lucas and disappear, claimed we'd never find them. Then she'd cry and apologize, blaming the stress of illness. The emotional whiplash was exhausting. Lucas started showing signs of trauma: bedwetting, refusing to eat, clinging to me during transfers between houses. The preschool teacher pulled me aside, concerned about his sudden behavioral changes. Something had to give. Pili's next move was calculated. She called claiming she was having a medical emergency. I rushed over with Lucas to find her perfectly fine, but she'd already called my parents claiming I'd kidnapped him. The manipulation was escalating, using Lucas as a pawn in her psychological games. Mom suggested we start recording our interactions with Pili. Every pickup, every drop-off, every conversation about Lucas. The recordings revealed a pattern of lies, contradictions, and increasingly erratic behavior. She'd say one thing, then deny it minutes later. The breaking point came during a routine exchange. Pili grabbed Lucas and ran to her car, screaming that we were abusing him. Lucas was crying, reaching for me. Neighbors came out to watch. She drove off before I could stop her. My parents and I spent 3 terrifying hours not knowing where she'd taken him. She finally answered her phone, claiming she was protecting Lucas from us. She demanded $50,000 to return him. The mask had finally slipped completely. Dad called our lawyer while Mom and I drove to every place we thought she might go. We found her car at a motel 2 towns over. Through the window, we could see Lucas watching TV while Pili packed their things. She was planning to run. I knocked on the door. Pili answered, wild-eyed and desperate. She tried to slam it shut, but I blocked it with my foot. Mom appeared beside me. Pili's face went through a series of expressions before settling on calculated calm. She let us in, immediately launching into accusations. We were trying to steal her baby. We'd turned Lucas against her. The money was rightfully hers for what she'd suffered. Lucas sat on the bed, confused and scared, clutching his dinosaur. Mom sat next to Lucas, talking softly about the cartoon on TV. I stood between them and Pili, who was growing more agitated. She grabbed a lamp, threatening to call the police and claim we were attacking her. The situation was spiraling. That's when Lucas did something unexpected. He got up, walked past me, and hugged Pili's legs. He told her he loved her but wanted to go home. All the homes, her house and our house. He didn't understand why everyone was upset. Pili crumbled. The lamp fell from her hands. She dropped to her knees, sobbing and holding Lucas. The manipulation, the schemes, the desperation, it all poured out. She admitted she'd been terrified of losing him, of being forgotten when she died. Mom knelt beside them, putting her hand on Pili's shoulder. She spoke quietly about fear and love and making mistakes, about how Lucas needed all of us, but most importantly, he needed us to work together. The tension in the room slowly deflated. We spent the next hour in that motel room, finally having the honest conversation we'd avoided for months. Pili admitted to the gambling, the manipulation, the lies. She was drowning in fear and debt, making increasingly desperate choices. Dad arrived with our lawyer, but not the police. He brought a different set of papers, not threats or ultimatums, but a new arrangement. One that acknowledged Pili's fears while protecting Lucas. Clear boundaries, financial oversight, family counseling requirements. Pili resisted at first, pride flaring, but Lucas had fallen asleep in her lap, trusting and vulnerable. She looked at him, then at us, and finally nodded. She signed the papers with shaking hands. The drive home was quiet. Lucas slept in his car seat. Mom sat in back with him. I drove while Dad followed in his car. The crisis had passed, but the real work was just beginning. We enrolled in family counseling the next week. All of us, even Lucas, in age-appropriate sessions. The therapist specialized in complex family dynamics. Those early sessions were brutal, full of accusations and tears and raw honesty. Pili's gambling addiction became the first focus. She joined a support group, with Mom surprisingly offering to attend meetings with her. The financial controls we implemented meant she couldn't access money for gambling, but the underlying issues needed addressing. Lucas slowly stabilized as the adults around him became more stable. The nightmares faded. The bedwetting stopped. He still moved between houses, but now with consistency and calm. The therapist taught us all how to prioritize his emotional needs. I deferred college for a year. My parents supported the decision, understanding that Lucas needed stability more than I needed to follow a traditional timeline. Some dreams had to adjust when life threw curveballs. Pili found a job as a bookkeeper for a local business. The owner knew her story and took a chance. Having legitimate income and a schedule helped her rebuild her sense of self beyond being Lucas's mom or a cancer patient. The trust fund was restructured with stricter oversight. Every expense required documentation, monthly reviews with all parties present. It felt invasive to Pili at first, but she gradually accepted it as necessary protection for everyone, including herself. Lucas started kindergarten that fall. We all attended the parent orientation, an odd quartet that drew curious looks. But when Lucas introduced us all as his family, the complexity didn't matter. He was thriving, and that was everything. Pili's one-year scan came back clear. We celebrated at the park where everything had started. Lucas played while the adults reflected on the journey, from crime to crisis to something resembling coordination. Not perfect, but functional. The arrangement solidified into routine. Sunday dinners at our house, Wednesday afternoons at Pili's, shared holidays and birthdays, doctor appointments attended by whoever was available, a schedule that prioritized Lucas while respecting everyone's needs. I started community college, taking classes around Lucas's schedule. My professors knew I was a young father and made accommodations. It wasn't the university experience I'd imagined, but it was the education I needed. Pili and I found a rhythm, not friends exactly, but partners in raising Lucas. Lucas. We communicated through a shared calendar and weekly check-ins. The therapist helped us establish boundaries that protected everyone's emotional health. Mom and Pilly developed an unexpected partnership. They'd take Lucas to the library together, grocery shop as a team, share recipes and parenting tips. The woman who'd stolen from us became someone Mom genuinely cared about. Dad took longer to warm up, but Lucas broke through his walls, teaching him to build things, reading stories, playing catch in the yard. By Lucas's 6th birthday, Dad was fully invested, calling himself the luckiest grandpa alive. The financial crimes felt distant as daily life took precedence. Raising a child required focusing on the present and future, not dwelling on the past. We'd all made choices, some terrible, but Lucas didn't need to carry that burden. Pilly stayed in recovery, both from cancer and gambling. She had setbacks, moments of weakness, but the support system held. The money controls prevented relapse. The therapy provided tools. The shared commitment to Lucas kept everyone accountable. I turned 20 as Lucas turned 6. We celebrated together, a reminder of how intertwined our lives had become. He made me a card in school, carefully writing "Daddy" in crayon. Pilly helped him spell it correctly, setting aside any jealousy for his happiness. The story spread through our small town eventually. People whispered, judged, took sides. But Lucas went to school happy, played with friends, and grew up surrounded by people who loved him. The gossip couldn't touch that truth. Looking forward, the path remained complicated. Dating seemed impossible to navigate. Career choices had to factor in custody schedules. Family vacations required negotiation and compromise. But we'd proven we could handle complicated. Lucas knew he was loved. That was the victory. Thanks for reading this story with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. I really love all the support from you, Gus, in my videos.